on the client strategy side, it's really about understanding like the business and not just now what's happening in the market, but where they're going to be in the next, 1, 2, 3 years.
Hey guys, it's Joey Chanel with Sippin and Selling. Today, I'm very excited to welcome my first female guest, Rachel Doeck. She's here from New York, my home state, and she's the Senior Director for ForceBrands. Welcome, Rachel.
Hey, Joey. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. I'm so happy that you're here. You're taking time out on your vacation, I assume. Is that what brought you to sunny Florida?
I mean, why else would I be? No.
She flew all the way here for me, guys.
For you.
It's a big deal. I'm so excited. I thought that you would be a really fun guest to have on the show because obviously you're a female in the industry, which is something that we love to highlight upon. And I also thought that you had a unique background because you started in mixology. Is that right?
Indeed, I did.
Very cool. So why don't you talk to me a little bit about that?
Beautiful. And funny story, I was living in Boca Raton, right here.
Oh.
Mixology, Meisner Park, right down the road.
No kidding.
Yep,
Stomping
so
grounds.
It's bringing me back home. So about, oh my goodness, I was in my early 20s. I moved down to South Florida. Planned to go back to school. I stumbled upon my, side career in hospitality as a mixologist and physician recruitment. So I used to work part-time, nights, weekends in hospitality, and I fell in love with it. So that's that's where I started.
Was the location that you were doing the bartending at still around, or did it go and change names, or is it still an establishment in Boca?
No, so it is I can't even remember what the group was at the time, but it was called Z451.
Oh.
It was right on the corner of Meisner Park, and they closed down years after I left. But it was such a cool spot. It was just like the best place to go that had like the freshest cocktails. Right, we were using all natural juices, and like we had the most delicious mojitos. It was a great spot.
I love it. Mojitos happen to be having a comeback, I feel like. And you're referencing fresh ingredients. That definitely goes in and out, I feel like. There's always some new trend. It's either the skinny phase, or like right now people are trying to create their own vodkas or, mixers of some sort. I personally always am looking for something new and innovative because I want it to translate to the off. But when I'm looking for something to bring home from an on-premise account to the off trade, I want it to be something usable, mixable, easy. Your background, I'm sure you had a lot of fun, crafty cocktails you had to put together. What were some of your favorite ones?
Ooh, that's a really good question. It's funny. That was actually when I was in my 20s. I started in mixology. That was when that was right when Saint Germain launched.
Mm.
So I remember just walking into the restaurant, getting myself familiar with like all the different brands and products, and seeing this beautiful bottle of Saint Germain. So to be honest with you, it became my new flavor and my new liquor of choice. I would mix pretty much I would throw Saint Germain in any single cocktail. But that was the start of, liqueurs are, Chinola. You look at Chinola, you look at Saint Germain. Chambord back 30 years ago. There's always like a cool liqueur to mix with a cocktail to enhance the flavor a little bit more.
Bartender's ketchup is what they call it.
We didn't call it that then,
okay,
but now we do.
Now we do. Now it's one of those buzzwords, Well, that's exciting to hear about. I definitely understand the liqueur world, as you mentioned, Chinola, and before that I sold an Italian cordial that will not be named, but it was a very, very big, cool product back then, but now it's just gone and obsolete. That happens. And unfortunately, that happens too often. That's where we're going to dive into what you do now, because I believe, if I'm reading into your title correctly, which I butchered a million times, I believe that you are in charge of strategic development with brands in the beverage world But explain a little bit more exactly what that means for those of us out there that maybe have never heard of ForceBrands. Give a little background about it, and then what your job title, entails.
Yeah, absolutely. So backing up about 15 years ago, I met the founder of Force Brands. We were Bev Force at the time, Josh Wand. He started a rum company. He worked for Southern. So like industry vet, still super young, right? He was like he's always been one of those just like serial entrepreneurs. So he was at, it was my Miami Food and Wine Festival. And he was there representing his rum company. And his friends in the industry just started coming up to him and they were like, hey, listen, we've got this new role that's opening up. Do you know anyone that could be a good fit for it? And it happened to him a couple of times while he was at the show. And it was just kind of like this light bulb moment for him, right? Like there was no one individual, there was no firm or no talent acquisition partner in our space, beverage alcohol, that was doing it. So he left his rum company and he started BevForce. So when he started BevForce, he's like one of those icons, right? Like he walks into WSWA and everyone knows him. So about 2 years into the business, Josh had a couple people working for him. I was introduced through a friend in South Florida to him, and he had this beautiful office in New York. I was moving back to the city. I stepped into his office and I was like, it was like one of those places, culture was such a big thing back then. And we thought culture was like really representative of being in office, which it's not. But of course, like that was just such a huge draw. And then meeting him and him naming all of these brands, right? Saint Germain being one of them, the clients that he was doing business with. And I was like, I know all of these brands. Like, this is the perfect fit for me. I was a physician recruiter at the time. I'm like, consumer, this is amazing. So I started with Josh, 5th employee, executive recruiting. We were working with, a ton of brands. And so Casamigos, Saint Germain, Taub Family Wines, all of these just amazing, products that we were working with. And so my role then was to identify and find talent in the market for roles in sales and marketing and finance and HR. So these companies were hiring, right? And some of them had internal talent acquisition teams, others didn't. And so they came to us as an extension of their team. So we kind of became the company when we were going out into the market. Okay, fast forward a couple years later, we decided to expand outside of beverage alcohol. So we had brands like Vita Coco and Kind Bar coming to us saying, hey, you guys are doing all this great work in beverage alcohol. Can you help us? So that's kind of how we like expanded into other consumer brands. My focus today is really in the regulated beverage space or the alternative adult beverage space, beverage alcohol. About 5 years ago, I started running our client partnerships. So I work with with brands in the regulated space, and I help them structure search strategies, organizational design, how to go to market for talent. And we kind of like develop the profile together. So it's kind of like I'm making a cocktail, but it's not a cocktail. It's a person that we're coming up with. And it's just such a great experience. A lot of the brands that we work with are companies that are going through just this inflection point. They might be just starting out and like on that growth road to, expanding significantly, or it might be a company that's been around for 20 years, right? And they're looking to revamp their executive leadership teams. So I work really closely across our brand partners. So that's my little bit about my story and my role.
It sounds like you got a pretty big role. I mean, it's just a small position. It sounds like you touch a lot of hot spots in our industry. From going to market alone is such a task. Lots of brands that come to me have no idea what they want to do first. They have a certain budget. They maybe have been, burned by the wrong people. So it's nice to have an outlet like ForceBrands to show them and introduce them to. It's nice that we have this relationship because I do want a lot of the clients that come to me, because they are by referral, I want them to get taken care of. And I feel like you guys have such a good reputation. And I've seen a lot of great outcomes for companies like you mentioned, like Chinola hiring different employees that they've been very happy with, and other clients that maybe I don't work with right now, or I haven't in the past. They've just come across my desk because, they wanted to see if I was the right fit. And I had encouraged them that it's not the time, because once you come to me, you get on the shelves in the chain world and it just takes off. It's just like a train that doesn't stop. And I want them to make sure that they're ready for that, because unfortunately, sometimes then they don't have the people behind it watching the inventory that's getting over here to the markets I'm selling it in. And I'm limited in what I can and can't do, or in my role, depending upon my reach or maybe their budget or whatever it may be. So it's nice to have a company that they can go to if they're looking for someone to help a route to market strategy, if they're looking for someone, a VP of sales, if they're looking for someone to focus on just maybe marketing or branding. I love that other brands reached out that are in, I guess that's the food world. And that's pretty cool, because I find that even on my side of my business, I do have unique products coming after me also that aren't just straight beverage alcohol. I have a couple female-owned products that I think are very cool, that are just mixer packets that you can put with alcohol or not, which I think is really cool. I have a lot of non-alc products coming to me. So is it anybody that can reach out to ForceBrands? Like, how do they get in touch with you guys? What's the process? How does it work?
Yeah, well, I always say when you're building a brand or when you're building a company, it's never a one size fits all. So as an example, actually, I will not name names, but I'm sure you could guess who it is.
Okay. This is a fun game.
A tequila company. Celebrity wanted to start their own tequila brand 9 months before they even, had product on the show, or before the tequila was even made.
Bottled?
They were bottled. They were coming to us saying, "Hey, we've got this celebrity. This is our concept. This is our idea. This is the story. This is the why. We want to start talking to ForceBrands about how you can help us identify a CEO. We're a couple months away. What do we need to do in order to prepare?" So honestly, come to us at any stage of growth. You could be, pre-revenue all the way to, $50 million, in revenue. You went through a couple rounds of raising capital and you need to revamp your executive leadership team. So yes, we are here. We are all about having conversations with, with companies and brands. And, going back to what you said before, you are an industry expert, right? Like, you have been in and you grew up in the space. How long?
18 years legally. But I mean, since I've been in my mom's stomach, I'm going to be 40 this year. So,
I know your birthday's right around the corner.
Yeah.
We hired a lot of people to work as executive recruiters on our team. So like, they understand the industry, from, sales reps coming from Boston beer to different spirits brands. And so they've come to us with this expertise. So when we're diving in and really trying to figure out how we want to go to market, when we have like the experts in-house who have like been in these roles before, whether it's sales or finance or operations, so they kind of like they speak the lingo. I've had so many companies come to me and they're like, "We want to be the next Casamigos." Of course, why not, right? So how do you do that? You really have to understand as a talent acquisition firm, like, where the gaps are in their business and what gaps need to be filled. What expertise do you need to, launch in 20 different markets over the next 3 months, and what that looks like. Every opportunity is different. But yeah.
That's very interesting. So walk me through the process. You get a brand, a new item. They're looking for, like I said, brand new. We already talked about not even being in the bottle. Let's say that they're with a small importer. Maybe they have 3 pallets of product in one market. What's the process? They reach out to you and they literally say, I have no idea what I'm doing with this, but we can't afford to go to a traditional distributor. How do you then find out of your assortment of contacts someone to help them? Is there a step? Like you said, it's not one size fits all.
Yeah.
So for that specific brand development, because that's a lot of the type of clients I have, startups that come to me and they're with a Park Street or an MHW, or maybe they're just clearing to specs at Greenlight, but they do get a new round of funding and they'll ask me, does it make sense to go to a Southern Wine and Spirits or a Breakthrough? And I'll explain to them that right now, climate, it's very hard to get a new brand in, especially if you don't have the sales data, right? They're always looking for those Nielsen trends. So if you're only limited to one market, only a certain amount of product, I can only build it so much for you in a chain. Now maybe I say, let's go to ForceBrands and see what their plan of action would be. How does it work? I would intro them, and then you have a pool of contacts that have already been vetted and that you have basically in a Rolodex, or how does it work?
Yeah, no, that's a good question, right? Everyone always asks this question. So think about it this way. We've been in the business for 17 years, and so we've developed it's really relationships, and you know how it is. It's such a small world. Like, you become friends with the folks that share that like passion for consumer. So we've developed just these long-term relationships, and some of the talent is new to us, coming through referrals. And they could be at any stage in their career, or they could be at any stage with an organization. They might not be actively looking. So think about it. We have this database, right, of professionals that we know, and we've come to understand what their career goals and aspirations are. So you come to me and you say, hey, I think I really need to hire, X person in this market. This is the stage of, this is where we're at in terms of our business. We then go into our network, into our,
Rolodex.
Our Rolodex, our pool of talent, just like you, right? Like,
Yep.
National accounts, you have this Rolodex of contacts and relationships. And I think there's been a lot. It's been a very tumultuous, I think, time in our industry. And so a lot of the talent who might not be actively looking, they're being cautious about when they make a move, why they make a move, where they end up going. Are they, how they feel about the brand? Do they think that it's going to be successful? So it's not just, a quick phone call with us being like, hey, I have this opportunity, like, let me put you in for it. It's really diving in deep. And so for us, especially me on the client strategy side, it's really about understanding like the business, and not just now what's happening in the market, but where they're going to be in the next, 1, 2, 3 years. Like think of High West, right? So we used to work with them, before they sold to Constellation. And, it's this new brand out in the market, and they have this distillery and they have the funding, but how is it going to be appealing to talent? Like,
Right.
Are they going to be around in the next year?
Right.
So for us, really understanding just the business model and the exit strategy. And listen, you think of an exit strategy now, it still can be really risky, right? You look at some of the brands that have exited and sold to larger strategics, and some of them unfortunately don't make it.
I know. It's really sad. And it's hard to know what is going to stick. And going back to my first question there, I asked because, they say there's a lid for every pot, but I don't necessarily know the part that I'm trying to understand and explain to the audience, because we're educating them about ForceBrands, because they may not know, and they may be tuning in. They're not in the industry, so we have to give a little bit of background. Say that you do have your Rolodex, you've got 5 people that you like, and then you recommend them to this brand. It still doesn't guarantee that it's a good fit, right? Mm-hmm. So how does that work then? You continue, obviously, on your side to find people to intro to these brands that are looking for someone to hire. But sometimes then the ones that you thought would fit, maybe now they've done this interview process. Like you said, they weren't looking, or, maybe they thought that they were unhappy where they currently are, and then they have this interview and they're like, no, actually, I'm really good. It doesn't always go so, sunshine and rainbows. It's very hard, this industry. It's very transient, I feel like, in some ways, but I feel like the good people are around. And I feel like the network is very important, but I also feel like references are very important. And you can have the best resume and you can have all these, cheerleaders saying that everything is great and I love them and I had no problems with them. And then they may sit down with this tequila brand and they're just like, you know what? Not the right fit. I realized after talking to this person, I only want to work with females or something like that. So then how does that happen? The conversation goes back and they give you like a list of things to make it even smaller, or what happens?
Yeah, I mean, on both sides, right? You have your client, the brand. We do work with distributors as well and ancillary services. So they have their list of, okay, these are the requirements. These are the soft skills I'm looking for. And sometimes those people don't always exist, but it's really on us to show them who's on the market, why they're on the market, why they're going to be a good fit based on, what we know of their business. And pivot. We pivot sometimes. Like we might be a month in and my clients telling me or our partners telling us, hey, you know what? Let's look outside of the industry. Like I want someone that's come from, let's say it's a healthier for you adult alternative beverage brand, right? And yes, just if it's sales, understanding the 3-tier, distribution network is really helpful, but maybe they're looking for a CMO and they say, we're starting D2C and I want someone who, has the knowledge there, but who can also bring us into like an omni-channel approach. Maybe we're looking at folks from, the beauty, health, and wellness space. And that process happens, typically like throughout the cycle of the search. And same thing on the candidate side. We might be looking, we might show a brand 3 candidates, we might show them 10. It's really, you go through stages, and a different approach so that everyone gets to a good place. And on the candidate side as well. Yeah, listen, sometimes a candidate will talk to a client. They might be at final stages, especially now. It happens all the time.
Yeah, I assume so. That's why I asked. I know I'm kind of being a little shady, but I can't help myself. I got to be honest. That's just my natural. That's my natural background. I got to be a little shady. But I was just curious because, I'm very honest about who I am. I know that about you as well. We're straight off the hip, straight shooters. I personally feel like regardless of what my background is, as you mentioned, regardless of how long I've been doing this, I still have some things about my personality that when I hear myself talk, I may be like, ugh. For example, my mom's from Minnesota, so I have a lot of cheesy one-liners. And for me, when I talk to some of these people that even I'm interviewing sometimes for my own family brands, I get that used card salesman like feeling, and I hate that. But for me, I feel that about myself sometimes. For example, I say I'm a sponge. I say it almost on every call. I don't know why. It's not a line. It's not a script. I don't like scripts, but I do say it all the time. And it is a truthful statement coming from me because I don't pretend to know everything. But for example, that could be something that someone's like, what the heck? That is so cheesy.
Yeah.
Or she's so one-liney and she's just making this up and it's a script. Another thing that I say that's very much my dad's statement is I throw everything at the wall to see if it sticks. Again, a line, So it's like that may turn someone off just because I say these cheesy one-liners, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how many people have had a good experience with me, how many people have had a good experience with ForceBrands. It all comes down to each product, each brand, each person. And that's kind of the point I want to make is that sometimes people aren't good on interviews, right? They don't do well on, a 5th round is a different example. You're saying they made it that far. To me, that means they know what they're doing. They feel like they can communicate their skills. But then there are some people, like you said, that you think would be a great candidate. And then you're going into the beauty and wellness space, which is similar, right? We're in sales. And maybe they don't know how to speak the lingo or they don't understand what proof means or whatever it is. And they shouldn't be turned away. So I love that you guys expand your Rolodex to a lot of different candidates, because there's everybody out there that I feel like deserves a chance if they want to work, if they want to hustle. And sometimes it just doesn't translate over the phone or a Zoom or over paper. So it's nice to hear that you guys reach outside of the usual pot. I appreciate that, because, you know, there are a lot of winners out there. And especially in this time, people are losing their jobs left and right, unfortunately. Things are changing in our industry. Things are getting shaken up.
Yeah.
So it's a great time. If you guys haven't gone on to ForceBrands' website, I would love for you to go on there and check out what's going on. Reach out to Rachel, because it seems like there's a lot of fun opportunities that she's got that could be open for anybody out there, even if you haven't been in the beverage alcohol space.
Yeah. And you know what? We're always a resource, even if you're not looking and you want to know how to negotiate a comp package for, you know, for yourself with whomever you're working for now. That's part of what we do. Like, we are here to help, not just our clients, but also candidates and professionals in our industry, you know, rise up to the next level. And, you know, going back to looking outside of just traditional beverage alcohol, it's diversity of thought, which is, it's the direction that we've been going as a community. And, you know, when I say community, I mean consumer community.
Right.
And I think it's where all the innovation has come from. You know, 5 years ago, you know, we weren't looking at there was no non-alc wine in the space.
Right.
You know, we didn't have maybe we had one cannabis beverage, I don't even know, hard kombucha. And a lot of those ideas have come from just that diversity of thought in consumers, like in a actual consumer as well. It's all about what the consumer wants. And so it's like you tie everything all together, but like, we will be a resource no matter what. And when we're working with candidates, we're also prepping them on it, how to they might be maybe they're a CMO, but it's been 5 years since they've actually interviewed. Getting yourself back on the market, it's not easy.
Oh, for sure not. It's not easy. There's so many different things that brands look at that are so important to them right now, like TikTok. I know my dad knows what TikTok is, but that's because he has me as a daughter. But
I was going to say, I'm shocked.
Yeah, but most people out there that have been in this world 50 years, they don't know what TikTok is. And a lot of these brands will say, like, how many followers do you have on TikTok? And they're like, what the heck is TikTok? Or they may ask if you have influencer kits and that sort of thing. And it's very hard to translate that to the old generation, the old school, you know, beverage alcohol professionals, to this new generation of brands coming out. You know, I feel like bridging that gap is very difficult, and it's nice to know that there are some people that can do that. And, you know, it's unfortunately the way our society is going right now. Everything's very social media driven. It's very important. It's why we do the pod, and I'm lucky enough to do it, but not everybody has those opportunities. There's some people that may not even know how to, like you said, they haven't been interviewed in a long time, but maybe they don't even know how to get onto ForceBrands' website. Maybe they don't even use the internet, which it sounds crazy, but there are some people that are like that. And I'm just curious if they would ever be allowed to be a candidate, because we did say we're reaching outside of our comfort zone as far as going into other industries. But just for shits and giggles, if there was someone newly in the industry, because he was the VP of Bacardi, you know, he's probably a hot ticket to a lot of people, but some people may say, you know what, no, he's not, because he probably doesn't know about TikTok, or he probably doesn't know how to, you know, use certain programs, you know, maybe he doesn't know how to use the new CRM technologies or Karma or any of those reporting systems that we all look at for sales data. How does that even make life fair, right? It's so hard.
Totally.
Because you don't want them to just get cast and thrown away. I think about that a lot. You know, my dad is 88 and he's still coming out with brands and he still loves this industry, and it's definitely a part of his identity. And I feel like it keeps him alive. So I would love that if there's anybody else out there listening, please make sure that you reach out to myself or Rachel or ForceBrands if you guys are looking to jump back in, because you still have a lot of gas in the tank, I'm sure. Anywho, that's just me having to have my little 2 cents because, like I said,
you're right.
I'm very much about. I like inclusivity, like you were talking about, and it's important. So another conversation that I wanted to have with Rachel, since you do have your mixology background and you are in charge of different types of acquisitions and partnerships with ForceBrands, you don't have to name names, but I always do like to ask about names and brands. Are there some that you would like to reference that were some huge success stories that you guys helped build?
So I can't name specific roles, but I can tell you some of the brands that I've mentioned throughout this conversation, like a Saint Germain or a High West, or even family-owned organizations like Ariboli, Family Wines, a Taub Family Wine business and company. We've worked with a lot of those brands, and we've hired some really great people for them. So I think for us, we have a lot of success stories, which is
it's important. And I'm sure a lot of these people that you partnered with them are still there today, which is really nice, and it's rare. The other question that I wanted to ask you was going back to your mixology roots. I always like to ask this question. What's your favorite things to drink? But also, since you were a bartender, what are your favorite cocktails to make? Top 3.
Tough. That's tough. I've been into Italian cocktails recently.
Oh.
And I'm totally going to botch the name just because I'm not Italian, but Spagliato. I've been drinking those constantly. Have you ever had one?
I've never even heard of it. So you're going to educate me. And here's one of my other cheesy one-liners. I don't pretend to know everything, so I'm a sponge, like I said. So let's go. Here's what I'm going to learn for today.
So next time I come back, you're going to make me a cocktail.
Oh, I love it. Let's do it. I think that would be a fun segment. All right. So let me hear about the Spagliata.
Yeah. So
right.
So every time I go to an Italian restaurant, I ask for it. I was just at Tremonti's in Del Rey, and I botch the name every time, but it's really how do I say it in Italian? It's like I can't.
We need
even
my
say
husband,
it.
Please.
Yeah, we need your
we need your husband. Boca Raton. Oh my gosh.
It's Campari,
okay,
sweet vermouth, and prosecco.
All right.
On the rocks. It's kind of like
an Aperol spritz, but different.
Like an Aperol spritz, but it's got the sweet vermouth in it. Now you have to be careful about how much sweet vermouth you actually put in it, and how much Campari, because Campari, it's got it's a little bit more tart than Aperol. It's sweet, but it's got just a different flavor. So it's got to be the right portions. But that's been one of my go-to cocktails. I'm a big wine drinker too.
Okay.
I mean, I love my tequila. So I love a good skinny margarita.
Nice.
I love a passion fruit margarita with chinola.
There you go.
Make it spicy. Add a little ancho reyes.
I love that.
Yeah, and I love my wine. I love my wine. So ask me
red, white, rosé. Listen,
it's summer.
Okay.
It's summer. So rosé, a Vermentino, a nice oaky Chardonnay. I am all about variety.
I love that.
Red in the winter.
Okay.
What about you?
I'm a tequila girl. Everybody knows I'm a tequila girl. I obviously have to say my family brands. I'll drink them. It's not my go-to. I definitely am just, I don't get high on my own supply, but I will drink. I will drink Cask 420 and Cloud Irish whiskey from time to time. I will mix them with those packets I talked about. They're called Mix Me Co. If anybody wants to look them up, female-owned, South Florida based. They're cool little packets, and I like that because I can't drink dark spirits on the rocks. It's just not for me. I used to love wine. I'll brand wine.
You're repping. Who are you repping right now?
This is Wine Girl. It's a brand I'm an ambassador for. I'll put the link on the bottom of the screen if you guys want to buy some merch. But wine doesn't love me. I don't know what happened. When I turned 35, I think, I started getting winesomnia. I get the sweats like I'm going through the changes. I'm so dehydrated. It doesn't matter if I have one sip, if I have a glass. Obviously, if I have more, I can't sleep. It's awful. I don't know what happened. Everybody says it's the sugar. I've tried non-sulfites.
Yeah.
I've tried this. I've tried that. But for me, it doesn't work. I don't know. It's sad because I do really love it. And sometimes I'll just bite the bullet and just have a crappy night's sleep. How do you feel about wines in a can? A lot of wines in a can are coming to me. I want to have that conversation. And you did talk about the non-alcoholic wines also coming across my desk. I would love to have a conversation about those two items. How do you feel about them?
I think when wines in a can launched, maybe what was it, 5 years ago? I think it, maybe Pampelone and Archer Roos, I believe, were,
Some of the first ones,
some of the first ones on the market. I was very skeptical. I'm WSET level 2 certified, and when you're going through the practice of learning and understanding winemaking and the story behind it, and why certain wines need to be decanted, you have this perception of canned wine that might not necessarily be the best perception. So when I first tried it, I think it was maybe an Archer Roos Sauvignon Blanc, I was pleasantly surprised. And so I think brands and wine companies, because there are some really great wine, family-owned wine companies that have also come out with wines in a can. So I think technology has the way they figured out technology and how to make these wines taste good and be fresh, in a can, I think is a really incredible thing. And since not even before COVID, but when COVID first, when we were in the height of
we were trapped and we couldn't get out
in our homes, I think people started exploring different options. And you have companies and brands like an Archer Roos that do have a really big, digital presence.
Yeah.
And, you're sitting at home watching TV you're scrolling on your phone all the time because you're, not
making TikToks.
People started trying them, and then they're bringing them to the beach over, bottles of rosé. So I think there's a certain occasion, not even a certain occasion, like every occasion can be an occasion for drinking wine out of a can. So I'm a big proponent of that space for sure. The non-alc wines, whether it's canned or bottled. I think there's some really good brands out there. I think that space, look at Wolfer, Spring in a Bottle. Have you tried Spring in a Bottle?
Yeah, I know. It's good. It's not summer in a bottle, but it's all right. It's all right.
It's not summer in a bottle, and I stopped drinking actually for about 61 days. I wanted to do a little refresh, and so that was one of my go-tos. Yeah.
So maybe that makes all the difference. I tried it, not, I hadn't cleansed my system. But I tried it against a couple other brands that came across my desk, because there was one brand that I tried that I liked, but I find that all the non-alc or the alcohol removed wines that I tend to lean towards that I like better have the carbonation. I find the still ones, I still can't find one that doesn't taste like juice to me. It just, unfortunately it does. And maybe if you're out there, send me some samples so you can change my mind. But right now, I haven't found one that I love, unfortunately. And I know there's a void that needs to be filled there. We need a hero brand in that category for all our pregnant mamas out there, or all of our sober friends out there. So if you think you got the next big thing, please let us know. Message us on CadeCap's Instagram or Sippin and Selling's Instagram. Well, Rachel, this was so much fun. I'm so happy that you came all the way from New York to sunny Boca Raton to hang out with me. Hope you had fun and I didn't make it too hard on you.
No, you're the best.
Oh, thanks.
You're the best. And just one quick, I guess, shout to a brand I didn't mention before.
Listen, I love to have the brands. I'm not scared.
Arlo and Shirley, I don't know if you've tasted them.
No.
But low alc, Arlo, Shirley non-alc. Try it. Great product. They're kind of making waves. They're making their way around, different states right now. So keep a lookout for that one. I so appreciate you having me. This was so much fun. And thanks. I got I got a little color while I'm down there. So thank you for that.
Of course.
A little vitamin D.
You're so cute.
Thanks for having me.
Where can I get the Arlo wine? Is it in stores yet?
So Arlo they're in New York. They're in a few different markets right now. I believe Texas as well. And they're selling direct to consumer.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
All right, I'll definitely check it out. Well, thanks, guys, for joining another episode of Sippin and Selling. I had a beautiful guest here today, my first female guest in the industry, Rachel Doeck from ForceBrands. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next time. Have a great day.